I run Americans for Tax Reform, which is a national taxpayer group in the United States. We work with state and local taxpayer groups, and the first thing we do is we ask all candidates for federal office, House, Senate, presidency, as well as state offices, governors, state legislators, to sign a pledge to the American people that they will oppose and vote against any and all tax increases. And among other things we've done is we basically branded the modern Republican Party at the national level as the party that will not raise your taxes. They may invade small countries they can't pronounce, but they will not raise your taxes. And as long as the Republicans have controlled one of the houses, House or Senate, since 1990, there has been no tax increase passed at the federal level. 16 years in a row, no tax increase.
When did you first find out about vaping, and when you did you recognize that as an issue that was aligned with Americans for Tax Reform, or at first did it not seeing that, or did you see it immediately? Almost
immediately. It was very interesting because we first of all heard the states started to move on it, and state legislators call us and say, here's a tax increase, be aware that this is going on. So we have many friends in the state legislature, more than 1,000 who've signed the pledge, and they alert us when there's a tax hike coming down the pike. And so that we can get in early to try and stop it.
When you look at the vaping industry, and obviously in some states they're taxing it as tobacco, what do you think about that?
Well, we see this over the last 40 years. We've seen different industries or products or services get demonized and taxed. Sin taxes, and then they just change their mind about what a sin is. Excuses the politicians give are never ending. The real one is we take the money where we think we'll get the least resistance and the most cash.
And do you see that then with the vaping industry and vapers? They're easy pickings?
Well, I think they're not easy pickings, and this is what they found. They got singed fingers. This is up there with the Wicked Witch of the West getting her fingers burned.
How do you mean? Like actually politicians are feeling the burn now?
Yes, politicians that started to go after the vaping industry with taxes, like New Mexico, a state legislator, lost re-election as a result. The Attorney General of Indiana, who was wrapped all around an effort to regulate and tax vaping, ran for Congress and lost, with the vaping industry playing a role, a visible role. It doesn't do any good to have a hidden role, beating somebody. You need a visible role in beating a politician. Other politicians know this. The second part is it went from being small and unknown and new to 10 million vapers fairly rapidly. And so it went from too small to bother with to so large it's dangerous to tax it. Tempting, but dangerous because a lot of voters may be irritated. Consumers of sin tax affected products tend to be reticent. Vapers aren't. They were irritated, mad, self-assured, livid, and angry, and feel very comfortable saying, I'm doing a good thing and you're messing with me, you're doing a bad thing and attacking vaping. So it was not only a new target for the tax increasers, it was a group of consumers that were growing in number and cared intensely about the issue, which made them people, it's more exciting to help defend somebody who's willing to fight for themselves than to put up a fight for people who aren't helping.
When you look at the FDA and what they've done, that's not particularly taxing, but it must play a role because it certainly puts a stamp on the sin aspect of things and makes it easier for the argument to be made for taxes.
The FDA is doing this, it's an attempted prohibition, because once you've done this, you can squash everything. 98% of products would become illegal, almost impossible for smaller products to be able to afford to jump through the hoops. It's completely nonsensical. There's no reason that any of the existing products shouldn't just be left alone. It's the FDA going, we can do this, and we do it because we can do it, and we're tough and we're big, and to hell with you. The FDA is actually back on its heels in a couple of areas. One is right to try, where they ban new life-saving drugs, and 32 states have passed a law that says once a drug has been said to be safe, you don't have to wait till it's effective before, as far as we're concerned in our state, you can buy it, sell it, use it, prescribe it as a doctor. And people with terminal diseases have been told by the FDA, well, we think this product's safe and it might save your life, but we haven't gotten around after years to decide it's actually effective. Well, how about if I try?
Could the states push back then on the actual vaping law? Could they have an impact on that then with the FDA?
Yes, they could. And you're seeing their refusal to tax and regulate and attack vaping. 6 states have excise taxes, most haven't, is a signal. And I think it would pay to have state resolutions or laws like you have with the life-saving stuff. It says, FDA, back off.
When it comes to understanding politicians and what moves them, what's the advice for vapers?
The most important thing is to understand the number of vapers and the number of adult voters that are affected by this. Let them know about the national number, 9-10 million. Okay, that's the government's numbers. I think it's 9-10 million, and it's growing rapidly. So that number, and always update the number. Don't be using 10 million 3 years from now.
Right.
Keep updating the number as it moves forward. And if you run a vape shop, you're like a barber. You talk to hundreds of people in a week. That's a very powerful ally for a candidate or an elected official, or challenge and threat to that elected official. They care deeply. It's like a small radio talk show.
Americans for Tax Reform, you guys, well, I mean, you move elections. I mean, you do get politicians to sign a pledge. Should vapers out there feel hopeful that an organization such as yourself seems to be behind this effort?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's clear that not only is the industry increasing and the community increasingly self-aware, but its potential allies are as well. And Americans for Tax Reform has seen this coming for a while and always worked with the vaping community and vaping stores to let the politicians know there's a new kid on the block and he or she wishes to be left alone.